just give it a few more minutes to let a couple more people show up. And if I could just remind everyone to please just mute yourself for now while we do some introductions and listen to our guest speakers. So we'll start in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I think we will go ahead and get started. It's 7:05, and then we can just have people enter the Zoom as they come on. So welcome everybody to our October Parents Association meeting. My name is Kate Perlin. I'm the Parents Association president. For those of you who I haven't met yet, welcome. And we're really excited to have such a great turnout. We had over 120 people join us for our first meeting in September, which was just a thrill. So hopefully we'll be able to reach out to many more parents in our virtual world than we typically are sometimes on campus at 8:30 in the morning. But I do miss seeing everyone in the barn commons and gathering together. But I know this is a nice way to connect and have more people participate in the meeting. We have a lot of information to pass along to you tonight, some great updates on some wonderful PA events that we have going on, and then two very important guest speakers with us tonight, Randy Altschuler and Aaron Weiss, our wonderful Key School counselors. And so with that, I don't have a whole lot else to say other than welcome. I'm glad to see everybody here. And we will start with our updates. The first one is from our 5K, 10K, and Family Fun Run chair, Dawn Maddock. And Megan is not able to be here tonight.
Hey, everybody. Hey.
Hey.
Hey. Who's been running? Raise your hand. I just got back a few minutes ago. I was doing some small turns in my living room, so I'm feeling a little dizzy. But I just want to remind everybody, this is the week. This is the week where you can walk, you can run, you can bike, you can channel surf. However you do it to burn calories, this is it. So sign up. I think we're up to what, about 200, right, Trish? 200 runners. We are over the moon, thrilled. We could not be happier. We hope all of you here on this call are signed up. And if you're not, go ahead. I think we're going to keep registration open until Saturday, right, Trish? Until Saturday. Then we have to cut it off. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them here.
How do we put results in?
The results. So since we're virtual, we are not asking you to turn in your timing or anything like that. We just want to get a general idea that you did something, you know, whatever works for you. But get this, we are having on Sunday a parade in which you can either just drive through with your car and pick up your bag of goodies, which will include a water bottle and some literature from some of our sponsors, good stuff, and of course your t-shirt. You can pick up all that on Saturday, and we're going to have a little area if you'd like to take a picture. You can do that just to show that you did something for the Key School.
And the good
How'd
news
that
is you still
sound,
get a
Todd?
medal, Todd, even though you didn't get to put your results in there, you still get a medal. Right, Dawn?
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. The medal. You can't forget the medal. Anybody else? Did I cover everything? Yeah,
I think so.
you sure?
Yeah.
All right, all right, all right. You guys have a good night, everyone, huh?
Thank you, Dawn. That is so exciting. I didn't know that we had 200 people signed up already. So that is amazing. That's really great. Thank you to everyone who's participating. I went out and walked last weekend. It was beautiful, and I can't wait to get my medal. So I will be there Sunday at the drive-through finish line between 12 and 2. Okay, great. The next thing we're going to talk about is Trish is going to give us an update on a sort of new event that we're holding this year. It's kind of a nod to our harvest dinner that we were unfortunately not able to hold this month in October, but it's kind of a new thing and it's going to be fun. So Trish is going to tell us all about that.
Thanks, Kate. Well, as Kate just mentioned, unfortunately, as many of you know, the PA has been unable to host a few events so far this year, like the coffee and things that we love so much, to get together to see all your faces and meet the new parents out there. But one of the most beloved new events that we are missing this year is the Harvest Dinner and Auction Party at Great Frogs. It was only started 2 years ago and became just such a favorite event the first year we had it. So as some of you may know, COVID has really hit hard our friends at Great Frogs. So that tornado that we had recently ripped up the South River, just tore the roof off of their tasting room and destroyed the tasting room. So in the spirit of community and to be a good neighbor to Great Frogs, the PA is going to partner with Great Frogs and bring their tasting room to you now. So isn't that exciting? You still get to have that wine. And we're going to host a virtual wine tasting. It's going to be November 20th at 7 o'clock. And it's really going to be neat. It's going to be like a flight of 8 different wines, 16 ounces, I think it is altogether. So it roughly is about 4 glasses. So kind of meant to be shared for 2 people. But we'll have a tutorial on each wine that night in the wine tasting, which will be interrupted with some really exciting raffle prizes. So we have 3 things we're going to raffle off that you will definitely want to get a ticket for. It's going to be a surprise. I'm not even going to tell you right now, but it'll be on the website soon. So, so anyway, come and join us that night, sample, learn about 8 different wines that night with Great Frogs experts. Registration is going to open next week for this new event, and keep an eye out for that in your inbox next week.
Remember when the book festival had a surprise?
Awesome. Thank you, Trish. I'm excited for this new opportunity, and I think the raffle is going to be pretty exciting. Yeah, lots of cool ideas that we have for that. Thank you. So the next thing we're going to hear about is an update on the Annapolis Book Festival, which is in April. So our co-chairs for that are going to give us a little information and kind of what's in the works for the ABF. And that's Kate Curry and Beth Lipinski. Yep.
Thanks, Kate. I'm Kate Curry, for those of you I haven't met before. So the book festival, like I think most of our fundraisers and school events this year, is going to look a little different. We've met a couple times, and we've decided that, at least for the authors portion, we are going to stick with, I think, the virtual format. So details to come on how that's going to look. We're still in the planning stages of that. We do hope to have maybe a small gathering in person, but that's going to be completely depending on the current environment. So we have a few ideas, things that we're going to generate, a couple ideas we're going to try to put forth, and also easy exits. So if we have to cancel or reschedule or move things around last minute, we're not losing deposits or things like that. So we have a few things in the works. The committees are starting to meet and starting to work with this new environment. So I'm actually going to pass it on to Beth, my co-chair. So we have a few plugs out there for things that we're looking for.
Hi, I'm Beth Lapsinski. I'm working with Kate on the book festival. Our biggest need right now is for anyone in the key community that is tech savvy, that can kind of help us navigate this new endeavor in generating, obviously videos potentially of these authors if we're not going to go live, if it's going to be a virtual event, as well as kind of generating this platform that we want to use to kind of launch the book festival, something that's going to be user friendly for the community, and something that's really going to showcase, you know, Key School and the book festival itself. So if anyone knows of anyone that is so inclined to donate their time and expertise, we would greatly appreciate it. I think
All
that's
right, is that everything from you guys?
I think so. And as of
All
right
right.
now, we're keeping it April 24th in that weekend. So
Yes, April 24th. Great, thank you guys. And the committee has been doing a little work looking at some of the other book festivals that have been going on around the country in different places and kind of getting some good ideas, and pretty much everything's virtual at this point. So we've got a lot of great intel from that respect. So I think it's going to be awesome. All right, the next thing, next update we're going to hear is from Bria Berry in terms of our annual fund situation. So thanks.
The situation is good. Hi,
Good.
my name's Bria, and Jeremy Martinez, our new annual fund director, has also joined us in case there are any questions that are too hard for me to answer, but it's a quick update. We're doing really well so far, raising funds for the annual fund. If you weren't able to join the last PA meeting when we explained what the annual fund is for, it's really supplemental budget kind of going toward the operating costs of the school annually. So our goal for the year is $563,000, and we are over 75% of the way there already, thanks to very generous donations from the community. And we just wanted to thank donors and draw your attention to some of the upcoming things that are coming for us to pay attention to. So next week, I think you'll see in the mail a mailer coming to solicit funds for the annual fund. So keep an eye out for a mailer coming soon. And then on Wednesday, October 28th, we have so far, I think, 22 volunteers who are signed up to help with our phone-a-thon. So get ready. You may receive a phone call at home or on your cell phone from Key School, and it's just a phone drive to raise funds for the annual fund. And this year, despite not being able to continue with our traditional gazebo giving day, we're still going to participate in the costume dress-up day that will be happening on campus. And there will be an option for folks to text to give that day. So also keep a lookout for that information. There'll be some little stands up with the phone number to text. And Jeremy, you may know that off the top of your head, but there'll be folks out to draw your attention for drop off and pick up. And I think that covers it. So yeah, we're over 75% of the way toward our goal of $563,000.
Thanks, Bria. That's awesome news. You guys have done a great job, and I know that Jeremy hit the ground running. So thanks to him too for getting out there and really working hard to get us to that number so far. The next thing we have is our guest speakers. So I'm going to turn it over to Randy Altschuler and Erin Weiss, and they are our Key School counselors, to talk to us about the social and emotional impacts of COVID on our students of all ages. And if anytime during their presentation, if you have any questions, can you please put them into the chat and direct them to me, and I'll be moderating those questions and passing those along to Randy and Erin, probably towards the end of their presentation. So thank you very much. And here's Erin, I believe.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am Erin Weiss. I am the first school and lower school counselor at Key. It is really a wonderful thing for us to be here tonight. I'm looking forward to sharing information with you. Randy, did you want to introduce yourself briefly before I get started?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I see a bunch of familiar names, familiar faces. It's nice to see everybody. I wish this was not the way we were all seeing one another, but it is our reality now. So I am the school counselor for the middle and the upper school divisions. I've been at Key for 8 years in this role, but some of you know I have my own 2 children who were lifers at Key. So I've been around Key for quite a long time, a couple of decades, and feel like I have a reasonably solid long-range view of the school. And I'm eager to hear from you tonight. I'm excited to hear what Erin has to share, and hopefully we can answer whatever questions you have.
All right. I am going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys and get started. All right. So we are now several months into a global pandemic, and there is more uncertainty and stress ahead. Life is difficult for children of all ages. They might be experiencing sadness, anxiety, and behavior challenges, for example. And parents are left wondering how this will affect children in the long term. I get asked that question often. Can children be traumatized from the coronavirus crisis? And if they are, how will you know? The good news is that kids are resilient, and parents can help foster that resilience. Even though this situation is stressful, you have the ability as parents to make a difference down the road. So, trauma is a word that is used frequently, obviously, but it's important for us, I think, to understand what trauma actually is. So a traumatic event happens when someone is physically threatened or they witness that happening to someone else. However, it's important to note that the event itself doesn't define whether or not something is traumatic. Trauma is really about the individual's reaction to the upsetting event. Just because a child goes through something that could be traumatic doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be traumatized. It depends on the child's interpretation of the event. For some children, the coronavirus crisis will be traumatizing, especially if they have experienced the death or hospitalization of a loved one due to COVID or have been sick themselves. However, for a lot of kids, this pandemic will not be a source of trauma, but it will be a significant stressor in their lives. The stresses these children are experiencing might cause emotional or behavioral changes, but not be significant enough to meet the definition of trauma. They might be experiencing symptoms of anxiety, depression, or disruptive behavior. So what does that look like? So in general, you can see what is listed in front of you. I also have preschool age and elementary age listed, and I know Randy is going to go over more of what middle and upper school students go through. But in general, you might see a lot of these for all children. In addition to what is listed for preschool age children, you might see difficulty sleeping. In addition to regression, you might also see a lack of developmental progress, over or underreacting to sensory stimuli like physical contact, bright lighting, sudden movements, or loud sounds, and worry about the safety of self and others. They may also have new fears that they didn't have before, like fear of the dark or animals or monsters or things like that. For elementary children, in addition to what is listed, you might see an increase in activity level, distrust of others, a change in ability to interpret and respond appropriately to social cues, avoidance behaviors, emotional numbing, seeming to have no feelings at all. For all children, extreme stress triggers the fight, flight, freeze response. These children are typically hypervigilant in all environments as they work to determine their level of both physical and emotional safety. When triggered, the amygdala, which is the emotional part of the brain, hijacks the brain and creates a very strong emotional response that is immediate and overwhelming. It in turn shuts down the prefrontal cortex, where higher level thinking occurs, which causes lower cognitive functioning. A child experiencing this needs to calm down before being asked to think or to process anything that they are going through. So, we know that trauma and extreme stress can cause children to struggle developmentally and emotionally as they mature. What has been less well understood is why a small percentage of kids who have these traumatic experiences have normal development and good adult emotional health. What factors created a level of resiliency in these kids that helped them to survive and thrive despite difficult childhoods? Well, in 2019, researchers at Hopkins published results of the first large-scale study that sought to identify positive childhood experiences that acted counter to traumatic experiences. The 7 positive childhood experiences, or PCEs, they identified are categories of childhood and adolescent experiences that are connected to improved mental health and social connectedness in adults. This study suggests that increasing PCEs contributes to creating resilient kids who are able to become healthier adults. And they found that the relationship between PCEs in childhood and good mental health in adults is dose responsive. That means the more PCEs a child gets, the better their adult mental health is likely to be. The recovery from traumatic events and extreme stress is driven by neuroscience. Due to neuroplasticity, the brain can heal from these situations. The greatest factor in healing is relationships, and relationships are the most important part of helping our children heal. Resiliency is a set of flexible cognitive, behavioral, and emotional responses that can be learned by anyone through the teaching of attitudes and skills. We can teach these skills explicitly to our children by teaching strategies to manage emotions, for example, or implicitly by doing what we can to accept the situation and ignoring self-judgments and the fear that we are not doing enough. We are all doing the very best we can to cope with an unfamiliar and rapidly changing world. I encourage you to be kind to yourself as a parent, to other parents in our communities, and to our children who are navigating a new year different from any other in our collective memory. Thank you very much. That is it for me.
Thanks, Erin. So welcome, everybody. Thank you, Erin. I think it's really helpful to actually lay the framework of all of this in the context of the differences between stress and trauma. This is indeed really stressful and traumatic for many people as well. I'm going to shift a little bit and just share some of what I'm seeing at school. Again, my frame of reference is the middle and the upper school divisions. I'll reflect a little bit on a personal level and also share, and I'll start by sharing that This afternoon, I was asked to speak to a seminar class at AU. It's a bunch of freshmen. There were about 30, maybe 35 students on the call. Some of you may know Iris Krasnow. She was a longtime Key School parent. She's a professor of journalism at AU, and she's teaching a class on intimacy and relationships. And they've just finished watching the movie Three Identical Strangers and are talking about nature versus nurture. And she thought it would be interesting to have someone come in and speak a little bit about family dynamics and relationships. I have to tell you, they were an extraordinary bunch of kids. I'll call them kids. They're, young adults. But my heart really broke for them because I looked around, I kind of scrolled the Zoom screen and heard from them over the course of the hour and a half that I was speaking to them. And other than one student, they were all basically learning from their childhood bedrooms. And I was reminded that I think, look, this is challenging for children of all ages, but is challenging in very different ways for our older students. Maybe a quick show of hands for me would be helpful because all of your names are not familiar. I know some of your videos are off. Maybe Kate and Trish can fill in the blanks, but I wonder for those of you who do have videos on, how many of you have middle schoolers or upper schoolers at Key? And I'll just take a minute and scroll through. Okay. Okay, so again, some of what I'm going to talk about does apply to our younger students, but I'll share what I'm seeing kind of on a day-to-day basis. I guess I'll start by saying that from my perspective, while this is hard for children, I think by and large, this is most difficult for all of us in very unique ways and in some similar ways. I think children at school have been remarkably resilient. It doesn't mean that it is not uncomfortable for them. It doesn't mean that it's not their favorite way to be at school. I personally can't stand wearing a mask all day. It's uncomfortable. But I would say that by and large, when your kids are on campus, for those of you who have kids now who are at school and not learning via Gateway, they're pretty happy to be there. And they're pretty adaptive, I would say. I think the first couple of weeks felt like a bit of a steep learning curve for all of us and a bit of an adjustment. But I think now many of the children are kind of getting into their rhythm. And I'm seeing that across the board. So in terms of some of what I'm seeing in the way of how this might be negatively impacting students or might be challenging for them, for middle and upper schoolers, I have to chuckle for a second. When Erin and I were kind of going over some of our slides and presentation last night, we were talking about like the hallmark of adolescence is to be irritable and angry. And if you look at kind of all the information about some of what you'll see in children and adolescents during COVID, it is irritability, heightened emotion, heightened anger. So I would say, yes, not to be glib. Of course, I think it is challenging. But again, some of this is happening at the time in our children's lives when they are by nature challenging adolescence in some ways. So, but we are seeing students who I would say have heightened irritability, maybe a more difficult time attending to tasks, focusing. We are seeing some absenteeism in ways that around some students that it's a little unfamiliar to me. I think also because we're in this hybrid model, it is giving some students permission, so to speak, to be out for a day or two. And again, sometimes there are very real reasons why that is, but I think some of the students I'm working with to encourage them to be at school as much as they possibly can, unless there's a real medical reason or physical reason why they can't be there. So in terms of identifying which students are struggling, pre-COVID, I would say Katie Anderson and I collaborated very closely. There were often those students who were in and out of the health office, and they were in and out of my office, and they were pretty easy to identify and track. I try to take a kind of regular look at attendance and monitor that, along with like by 2 division heads and get a sense of whether or not there's a pattern. But more or less, I'm relying on our teachers in our team meeting approach to kind of discuss students and see what's coming up and which students might be pinging in certain ways in terms of their work, behavior, so on and so forth. Some general comments about grief and loss. I think one thing that became really clear last spring, especially, was that for our older students, they were really grieving the loss of, I would say, hallmark key school milestone events. And so for those of you who had 11th graders or might have had 10th graders who are now 11th graders, maybe they were missing their homecoming or their prom or their college visits. For our seniors, graduation, some of the kind of what I would say real hallmark key events. For our middle schoolers, their outdoor ed trips. So the 5th grade trip to Williamsburg, the Harper's Ferry trip, the Appalachian Trail trip, Point Lookout, Old Rag, rites of passage. And so I think it's important to just acknowledge that to our students. We certainly try to do that in the spring. I think as parents, it's a really important thing to do, to just acknowledge the loss of some of these things, which some will be recaptured and some won't. And again, I was reminded today with that class at American University that these are for the most part, these were students who had been seniors last year, and by all accounts, thought they were transitioning into their adulthood, leaving home and going to school, and there they were back at home. I think what we're trying to do, and I think my approach, is to try and find some silver linings in this. And boy, that can be really hard at times. But I'm going to give you just a couple of simple examples. Again, I'll preface it by saying that it's a little different now than it was last spring. I think last spring, a lot of us imagined that this was going to be a couple of months. We weren't quite sure what the future would hold. But as Erin said, there's a lot of uncertainty now. And so I think for many of our kids, the biggest challenge is not knowing like where the end point is. And that can be very unsettling. But some of the silver linings. So I'm often outside during recess for middle school. We have, as you know, kids in pods. And I think I'm seeing for many kids socializing in ways that might not normally have happened had they not been in a pod together. And just by virtue of the fact they were with these 6 or 8 kids, they would have been normally doing their own thing. I think there's a lot of family time, and while that can be challenging, and you, of course, as parents are being pulled in many different directions, I think it does present opportunities in ways that might not have been available before. And I want to encourage you to kind of keep the lines of communication open with your children about that. I think the best thing we could do is model for our children, and boy, it's challenging at times, but I think they take the cue from us. I'm going to pause for a second and just see if there are any questions so far about anything I've discussed or anything Erin's discussed.
We do have a couple questions. The first one kind of reflects what you were just speaking about, which is what changes are you seeing in social dynamics among students? And then the second, which I think is a follow-up to that, how do you think the pods are working as social groups?
Yeah. So do you want me to jump on that one, Kate? And then maybe Erin, you can talk about lower school?
Sure.
So, I don't know that I've seen large scale shifts in social dynamics other than what I'm seeing during recess and snack break. I think most of the time that students are in pods, they're pretty dialed into their classes. I've been sitting in one 6th grade pod in particular once a week. And when the students are in class, they're pretty much dialed in. But when they go outside for snack, recess, and lunch, Kate, for the answer to that question is, they are definitely, while there is some cross-pod playing, it's with very strict parameters. And I see kids socializing in ways that honestly, I don't know that I ever would have seen them socialize before. So to me, that is a big silver lining. There was a follow-up to that about something about the pods, though. Kate,
Are the pods working as social groups?
I think, look, it's not a perfect formula. We spent a lot of time in the middle and the upper school working on our pods. I think for the most part, it's working. I don't think it's perfect. That's just the honest truth. I mean, look, I was very worried. In fact, I was more worried about the return to school, not because of the safety factor, but because of that factor, the kind of feeling of chaos of being at school, which frankly, I'm not seeing as much anymore. I think the first couple of weeks, there was like a palpable energy on the part of probably everyone, especially the adults, as we were all figuring out how to do this. I'm not seeing that as much anymore. So I think the kids are settling into the rhythm, but it's tedious.
I do have another question that sort of follows up with that, and then maybe Erin can jump in. The question is, what do you think is acceptable for stress with students who are not adjusting, and the silver lining that you're referencing has not really come to fruition?
So Erin, I'll jump in for middle and upper school first, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. Look, we are certainly trying to scale back our expectations. For those of you who have upper schoolers, I'm guessing you're finding that challenging for your kids. I mean, the work ramps up in upper school. It just does. The transition is pretty significant from middle to upper school. That said, I am often on the phone with parents talking about kids who might be struggling and who might need some forbearance on the part of teachers in terms of workload for some short period of time. Certainly in the spring, we did a lot of that. We are certainly telling the kids just to do their best, I think in many instances, but I'm also aware that it's like, that's akin to a parent saying to a child, look, you don't need to get an A, but just do your best. And if you have a child who is particularly perfectionistic, or a child who's very driven, or a child who is particularly anxious, you can say that until you're blue in the face, and they're going to internalize it in a different way. We did move to pass fail in the spring in the upper school when we were off campus. That's not what we're doing now. And I think that did alleviate a lot of the stress for many students. But interestingly, not a lot of kids took the pass fail option. Most of them opted for the grades. I know, Kate, you have an upper schooler and a bunch of you do too. Look, what I would say is this, and I'll say it to all of you as parents, and I've said it to students. The playing field is level now. And I mean that everyone in some way is struggling, right? Everyone is experiencing this at the same time. Everyone who's applying to college at the same time is going through the same thing at every school. So I don't feel like there's a real disparity from school to school, from state to state, so on and so forth. It's hard for everyone. And I don't know that that gives you immediate comfort, but I have found that reassuring for some kids, just as a reminder, look, we're all going through it together. Our experiences may be a little bit different, but the playing field is level. I don't know if that makes sense or answers the question. And Erin, you want to take it from lower school, first school perspective?
Sure. I think I'll start with the question about the pods and the social aspect. I see it working very well in the lower school where there are pods. The kids seem very happy to be with one another. It is creating different social groupings, which is wonderful. I think kids get very used to their buddies, and this is causing new friendships to develop, which I think is great. It's been really nice to see, honestly. And I think my experience is that there have been a lot of efforts made by kids in the classroom, as well as by parents, to try and connect children across pods who would like to communicate, play a game, check in with each other. I think that has been really wonderful. Something that I am working on specifically in the lower school with the pods is we are talking in life skills about how this group is much like our family for the year. And we are learning how to get along with each other, because we don't necessarily get a break from each other in our pods. So we've been doing a lot of work on that, which has been a lot of fun. And the kids seem to like it. We've also increased life skills in the lower school to be every other week in each class, which has been great. And lunch bunches have been wonderful, and as a way to connect kids as well with each other. So that's been working really well, I think. And I think the question about stress, Kate, do you mind reading that to me one more time? I wasn't.
Yep. So the question was, what do you think is acceptable for stress with students who are not adjusting, and the silver lining that you reference has not come to fruition? And then also, how long should parents allow this to play out?
Okay. So in terms of what is acceptable for stress, I think you have to judge your child. You know your kids better than anybody else. And if they are really struggling, I think you can step in at that point. When is enough enough, right? I feel like we ask each other that, or ask ourselves that all the time. At what point do we say enough is enough? And if you find that your child is really struggling with stress, I do strongly encourage you guys to ask for help. Reach out to Randy or myself, reach out to teachers. And also, you can consider outside therapy. I'm a huge fan. And I think all therapists now are doing virtual sessions. So, you know, if your child is really struggling, it helps to talk to someone consistently. So I think you have to know your own child, and I think you have to say, all right, we've had enough. There isn't always a silver lining. This is hard. It's really, really, really hard as parents, as kids, as a family. This is hard. And for every person who says it's been wonderful because we're baking bread and we're, you know, going on hikes and we're, you know, I don't know, all kinds of great things. There's a lot of people that aren't doing that. And that's the reality. And I think it's really important that we all consider what reality actually is and compare it only to what we are living versus what other people appear to be doing.
I was just going to add also, you know, look, I think this situation has done is it has amplified for all of us, maybe characteristics, right? Weaker points in us, points of vulnerability. So I would say if you have a child who's anxious to begin with, they may be more anxious now. If you have a child who struggled with accountability at home for their work, my guess is they're struggling more now. If you had a child who edged towards school refusal, if they were having a tough morning, my guess is that might be happening more now. So I think, you know, look, what your threshold is, I think you know your children best, like Erin said. stay connected to the school and communicate. I think I have heard from parents where children have been really challenging at home, but frankly, at school, they've been, I think, probably easier. And so keep the lines of communication open with us for sure. And then I think they're just basic things you should be looking for. What's your child's sleep pattern like, right? How is their appetite? Is it diminished? Is it changed? So basic things just to give you a quick sense of where your child is and how serious the stress might be for them.
Thank you guys for acknowledging that this is definitely hard. And the silver lining may not be showing up as much for some people. I think that's a really good point to remember for everybody. The next question is from a parent of an 11th grader. Their child seems particularly exhausted when she comes home from school. Are you seeing that with other kids as well?
Mm-hmm. I would say there's an intense amount of fatigue. Look, I'm in and out of those classrooms, and I can tell you in the upper school, it is challenging with the pod system because of the scheduling of our upper schoolers. So the kids are on the computer a lot across the board, I'm guessing in all divisions. But yes, I think there's a lot of fatigue. Look, I don't know about you, but if I have a couple of hours of work during the day and I'm on Zoom calls, I'm exhausted. I'm really tired. And look, I don't want, for that 11th grade parent, I think it's also a really stressful year, 11th grade, and there's no roadmap necessarily for how this year is going. It's all new. So none of that seems unusual to me. But again, there's a lot I don't know about this particular student. I would say coming home at the end of the day, fatigued seems entirely within the range of what would be normal to me.
Yeah, but I know that kids in the lower school and in the first school are exhausted at the end of the day. There's a lot of demand placed on them. I think the other thing to remember too is that if you all can think back to what normal school was like, particularly when your children were younger, there is always that sort of need to gain, I guess, the ability to just make it through the day. And the fall is always particularly hard. I know usually for me, it's right around the end of October where parents come to me and say, my kid has no stamina. I don't know what's going on. And then it kicks into gear, usually around the beginning of November when everyone adjusts. But remember, our kids have not really been in the classroom in school physically since March. And so that need to build stamina now has increased like threefold. So instead of them, hitting the ground running, let's say by November, it might take them longer. They are beat. They're being forced to do many, many things that they didn't used to have to do on a regular basis in school. They're now having to get social cueing through masks. That's exhausting. They're on Zoom meetings. That's exhausting. It is hard work.
Erin, I was just going to add, look, I cannot tell you how challenging it is to be on a school campus and wear a mask all day. So for the parent of the 11th grader, to simply come home after having worn a mask all day is exhausting.
We have a comment. One parent noted that sometime with the Zoom and the screen fatigue, that blue light glasses have helped her child through that if they're doing a lot of it.
I've heard that from others. The screen time, it's challenging. I think for those of you, I think for all of you, right, regardless of the age of your children, because now everything in our children's lives is being delivered via screen. So I think anything you can do to encourage your kids to get outside during the week and on the weekends, I think is key. We certainly do at school. We try to get them out as much as we can.
Got another question that just came in. And I don't know, it's not directed at upper versus first school versus lower. So maybe both of you could speak on this. So the question is, based upon what you know today and experiences of teachers and students, do you believe there is more we could have considered as a community with our pod construct? For example, the social aspect of pods to include continuity of friendships, as well as new friendships versus just the schedule.
Erin, do you want me to go or do you want to go?
I don't know. I don't even know how to begin to answer that question.
I mean, I was pretty involved in the formation of pods in the middle and the upper school, so I'll take a hit. It was not an easy task, I will tell you. We spent dozens and dozens and dozens of hours trying to create those pods. And I don't say that at all defensively. It was so challenging. Taking into account social emotional factors, learning profiles, diversity, equity, and inclusivity, scheduling classes, how many teachers have to rotate in and out of a pod. It was a bear of a task. I wish I had a better answer.
Yeah, I think the entire process is extremely difficult, and there are a lot of factors that go into creating a class. Homerooms in general, in both the first school and the lower school, every year is a very, very well thought out, deliberate process. And it is complicated. It's really hard.
Yeah, we have several parents wanting you to know that they say thank you because they're sure it wasn't an easy task. Obviously, it's never easy, but this just throws a whole nother couple layers on that, I'm sure. So a couple people wanted to tell you thanks for your time and putting all that together.
You know, Kate, one quick thing I want to mention, and this is maybe more upper school related. I think that before school started and when school started, a lot of students thought of those pods as being like their only social lifeline. And I think we're evolving a little bit as a school around this in both middle and upper school. So I think we're realizing more and more that we need to find opportunities for pods to be cross-pollinating as much as they can in a safe way, to be using the tents outside, to be eating lunch with other pods in a safe and appropriate way, because it's just too restrictive for these kids to be only with those other students who they're in a pod with. And I think we're going to continue to try and find more opportunities to do that. I mean, as an example, for those of you who have sixth graders, I was in Andy Katz's pod. I've been in his pod every life skills period so far. And we just took the kids out onto the field and played cornhole, all of the sixth grade. And it was great. And we tried to do it in as safely a way as possible, but I have to tell you, it was a gorgeous day. And I think it went a really long way for those kids.
Let me see. That was one of our last questions. A couple more people saying thank you. They're happy to know that you're working on more interactions for the students. I think that's a comment that I'm getting a lot. So it's hard, but the more opportunity, I think that we could all agree on that, obviously.
And look, Kate and everyone else, we have many students who have, for a variety of reasons, elected to go the Gateway option. I know there are a bunch of you here who have children who are learning via Gateway. And so we've had to balance that within pods too, not knowing at any given point how many kids we're going to actually select that option. And that changed the dynamic of the pods. I am hopeful as many of our Gateway students start to come back, it will help mix things up a little bit also and add a little infusion of new students back into the mix. I'm really eager for a lot of our Gateway students who are coming back in the next week or so.
Do you know if there'll be any changes coming once more students come on campus or after possibly breaks? If that makes sense.
Changes in pods?
I guess so, yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know, Erin, about you. Certainly, I'm not integral in that decision. I want to just say, like, there are many of you I don't know, and a bunch of you who I have worked with for a number of years. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Erin if your child is really struggling. These are unique times. We will do everything we can to advocate for your child in whatever way we can. Don't hesitate to ask for help. Really, I mean, that's what we're there for. And I'm finding now that I'm not seeing students in my office, I'm spending a large chunk of my time talking to parents.
Yeah, for those of you, I guess for those of you in the first school and the lower school, I know it's been sent out a number of times, but I have office hours daily, and there's a link to sign up on my calendar to use to meet with me. All of the homeroom teachers have that link, or you can just email me directly and I can send you the link as well. But yes, I'm readily available and able to meet with you or your child or both, whatever needs arise.
Here's another question from a first school parent. Is there anything we can do to prepare young children for the shock that may come from having to quarantine and be away from Key for 2 weeks? We have talked about it, but it's still going to be abrupt when and if it happens.
It is really hard to prepare for that. And I think everyone will struggle a little bit with it. I think, it's important to keep talking about it, that it could be a possibility that we might have to do homeschool again, only homeschool, whatever it may be. But just to keep the conversation open and to talk about it as though it is a very real possibility. And I know with little kids, you have to be careful what, you don't want to talk about things that are so far away in possibility that then they latch onto that. But I think preparing them for a lot of different options is a really good thing. They need time to process on their own. So if you begin to talk to them about it, I think they can start to work through that process. Keep saying the word process a lot. They can process on their own and start to come up with their own questions as they need to. There are also books out there, by the way. I actually have a really great book that I purchased called the COVID Kids Activity Book that I'm happy to send a copy to whomever might like it. There's some great activities in there for the whole family. There's activities for kids. And there's just some pretty great kid-oriented language to describe what it means to quarantine and why we are doing it and why we wear a mask and how we stay safe. So if you are interested, please feel free to email me and I can send you a copy of that.
All right, that was the last question that I got. So I guess I'll put it out there. If anyone has any more questions, please send them through the chat directly to me, to Kate Perlin. Trish, did you get any questions? Okay. All right. I don't see anything else coming through, so we'll leave it at that. Do you guys have any other closing remarks?
I was going to share a story, Kate, for a second.
I like stories. Let's do it.
And some of this you may resonate with some of you. Some of it may seem very far off if you have young children, but I think there is somewhat of a message in it. And it's about how really adaptive we all can be and are. And to give ourselves credit for being so, even in such challenging times, how we are, as Erin said, really resilient as people. I was talking to a parent the other day whose child graduated and is now doing their freshman year in their bedroom, kind of like what I described this afternoon with this class at AU. And I was asking the parents, well, God, how has that been for your child? And they said, well, it's not great, although they're making the best of it. But the student is in the school play virtually. They are in the a cappella group virtually. They're in the chorus virtually. And I was amazed, actually. I mean, this is a kid who was pretty involved at Key, but I thought to myself, wow, right? So is it ideal? No. I mean, I'm sure that student more than anything, and those parents want that child to be on that college campus, but the child's adapting. And I guess, look, there will be a time when we are all on the other side of this. God willing, it's sooner rather than later. But I think don't underestimate your role as parents and how resilient your kids really can be, because I think they are. Even those who are struggling. And I'm not a person, for those of you who know me, who sugarcoats things, but I mean that in all sincerity. I think our kids are remarkably resilient, and I think it's hardest on us.
I will say that I agree 100%, Randy. Our kids are really resilient. And for those of you who have younger students at Key, I guess it might be helpful to know that I do check-ins through life skills every other Friday, especially with the lower school students. And consistently, kids are telling me that the reason why they're happy is because they're back in school. And the best part of their week is coming to school. They're grateful to be in school. Some of the things I ask are, what are you grateful for this week? I'm grateful to be in school. A little first grader who was very sweet, she said, I'm so happy today because I know tomorrow I get to wake up and I have school again. And I think that's really wonderful to just remember. Our kids are, especially the little ones, they're really, really happy to be in school. It gives them something to do. It gives them regularity. It's great. And it's nice for me to hear repeatedly how happy the kids are. It's really, really wonderful. So I just thought I would share that. The kids are having a good time. They're struggling. We're all struggling. Let's be very clear. This is hard on everybody. But I'm hearing a lot of positives from the kids, which is great.
We did have one last minute entry for the question. In terms of if the kids are, coming home exhausted and that sort of thing, as we're all recognizing that, are the teachers adjusting, I guess, expectations? So the parent wanted to know in the parent teacher night of back to school night last week, they talked about, not really adjusting homework expectations. So are there adjustments being made for that?
So I can speak for middle and upper school. if homework expectations need to be adjusted, they will be. I need you as parents to communicate with me if you're not communicating with your child's advisor or your child's teacher or the division head. I will be your best advocate. I hope teachers continue to adjust expectations. I think it's really important for us to be communicating with them when kids are really struggling.
The lower school and the first school have both adjusted expectations. There's much less work, and I think most of the lower school does not have actual homework. Just assignments that maybe kids didn't get a chance to finish up during the day in school, but that's a big change. So.
All right. Well, we have so many comments, and
I have one more question that came in.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you initiate and support efforts to receive feedback and ideas from parents to help create new solutions?
Can we,
Yeah, it
Trish?
says, can you initiate and support efforts to receive feedback and ideas from parents to create new solutions? You know what pops into my mind? I don't know if this is correct or not, but I think I saw an email the other day that we are going to be sending another survey out to parents. Isn't that correct? So might that address that, or shall I read that again?
I think the surveys are probably the best option to do that.
I'm not sure I understand the question, Trish and Kate.
Yes, again, it just says, can you initiate and support efforts to receive feedback and ideas from parents?
I will certainly do my best to support efforts. I think it's really important if we're soliciting feedback from parents to pay attention to the feedback we're getting.
Okay, thanks, Randy.
Well, what I did want to tell you, there's so many comments of thanks in our chat to you guys and to everyone who's working so hard. And one that particularly stands out to me is from a parent who said, I'm continually reassured and encouraged by how hard faculty and staff are working for our kids and for us too. So that's the overarching sentiment of thanks. So, and we want to pass all those good vibes along to you guys. We know it's challenging all around. So
for you
thanks
too.
for joining us for this conversation, Erin and Randy. We really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Feel free to email me with any questions about the PA. And obviously, Erin and Randy are open and able to help us parents on this side of things too. So with that, our meeting is adjourned, and I would like to see if I can please get a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
Somebody raised their hand.
All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for our October meeting. We have actually added a meeting next month. We usually don't meet as have a PA meeting in November, but we've added a meeting this year, another virtual meeting, November, I think it's the 18th. And we're gonna have Jennifer Moore will be our guest speaker to speak about topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we'd encourage you all to join us that night again. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy and Erin.
Thank you.